This next conversation is split into two episodes. I'm delighted to be welcoming Hugh Massie to the conversation from DNA Behavior. And I think when I look at the two episodes, the first one we unpack what is DNA behavior and what does it mean? We understand a bit about the strengths and also the struggles that people have. I'd love you to listen out there and identify who you are. And if you want to go and take the test, the profiling that Hugh does, you can pick up the links in the show notes. It's a great conversation, and we really delve into what drives the human being. I understand a bit more about myself, and I understand about Hugh, the guest on the show today. So listen in and let me know what you think, as always. Welcome back to the Sparked by Ignium podcast. I'm Phil Rose, the host of the show, and today I'm delighted to be talking to Hugh Massie. Hugh and I connected over the internet a few weeks back, and we had a really interesting conversation about what Hugh does. And I want to start this podcast off by firstly welcoming him, but also asking him what he does, because his title says Behavioral Solutions Architect. So Hugh, welcome to the show. Tell me more.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. It's great to be with you today and to re-engage with you as well. And you being an engager, you like to engage. So let's I suppose let's get to the bottom line. That's really what you're asking me about what I do.
Yeah.
Every day.
That thing about behavioral solutions architect, and I'm not going to go into the next bit of your title there because I want to delve into that later. But what is a behavioral solutions architect?
Yeah, so a behavioral solutions architect, it's a different title or descriptor. Is really meant to be reflective of my identity, but importantly underneath that, my X factor. What am I the greatest in the world at doing? Or where can Hugh Massie win the gold medal? We've got the Olympics coming up, and I think that in life we're all looking for where can we do something that's unique, it's great, that really fits our talents, experiences. And the behavioral solutions architect really comes back to a key statement that I make to all business leaders, investors, whoever it is really that I'm in front of or serving. Of course, there's been a range, but what I come back to saying is, behind every business problem, life problem, financial problem is human behavior. Problems don't just happen.
Very true.
They're driven by people. Outcomes come from people. And so for me, with being a behavioral solutions architect, is really what I am doing is helping people or businesses, business leaders, families, architect new solutions for their business that are driven by human behavior. And so at DNA Behavior, we have our own proprietary behavioral system. I suppose like Gallup, the Gallup organization has StrengthsFinder, or there's Myers-Briggs. We have DNA Behavior. And, our difference is, Phil, we deal with money. We look at a person's financial behaviors.
Interesting.
But to grow our business, I've really focused on, I suppose I've been solution orientated, is how do I help people build unique solutions either inside their business or a new product that's driven by behavior. And that's what I do in our business each day. And, just at the moment, for example, interestingly enough, we've designed a new way to rate the capabilities of leaders.
Interesting.
And, a lot of the time people talk about emotional intelligence, that a leader has got to be compassionate and good at asking questions and listening and all these types of things, which are all important. But what are the behaviors that actually drive financial value creation?
Love that.
And so we've got a whole lot of measurements now around that, and we've built that into a rating system. And in fact, we've just gone and rated every leader, key leader, senior leader in the S&P 500 companies.
Wow.
And we know what drives financial success in those companies compared to the competitors.
That's really
So that's something that I've done, but we can turn that into a business model to stand us apart, because otherwise someone wants to do team training or, hiring or whatnot. There's 3,000 solutions out there.
Yeah.
But
We see them.
yeah, now they're all different. Some have got, what I call a bit of extra spark or uniqueness for dealing with a specific situation, whether it's communication or solving conflicts or a psychological issue. But, our differentiation is money.
Yeah.
But what I've been able to do is design a new product, for example, around how leaders get measured.
Yeah. Okay.
That's linked to financial results.
Love it. So it's really interesting, isn't it? That money is at the heart of it. And I think you've mentioned that word a few times in terms of building unique solutions. And it sounds to me that from a behavioral solutions perspective, your business is around DNA behavior. So you're getting to the heart of what really makes people tick, the thing that's right at the heart of them. So the thing you're there.
I think it's interesting. It's the heart of what makes people tick, but it's also the heart of where the cause of where a lot of the problems are.
Okay, tell me more about that.
So let's say that in a business, it's struggling with innovation. It's got to create new products to stay ahead, drive higher gross margins. So the business needs new products.
Yeah.
And it's got limited resources to do that. That's the blockage that's a blockage for a business. And it's probably a blockage for a lot of businesses.
Yeah.
And with AI out there today, that's an even bigger issue. But who in your business is going to be the one that's going to solve the problem? And how's that problem going to get unlocked?
Yeah.
That's not just going to happen by magic. AI doesn't just come into a business. It's got to be the people. New products don't just turn up that have got this great new gross margin and can reposition your brand.
Yeah.
This is about people. Or the business has got to take a risk. Or in fact, you've got a C-suite team that's at war with each other, and it's just broken down communication and things aren't happening. So it's becomes a leadership blockage and then an operational blockage.
That's interesting.
That's human behavior at work.
Yeah.
But my job is to step into business and see where is that problem, and will look at every problem through a behavioral lens.
So effectively, that gives you, it's almost like your microscope into the business. You can hone in on where the problem is directly, and as you said, it's what makes people tick, but it's also the issue. It's the thing that stops people, moving businesses forwards. And I think it's really interesting when you talk about this, because we're going to come on to the subject of identity and purpose later, because that was one of the things we talked about in a big way before.
Yeah.
But I wonder, from a purpose point of view, if you're talking there about measuring all of the businesses in the S&P 500 and understanding them, you've obviously got a way of looking at those businesses from an outside perspective. And you mentioned Gallup Strengths earlier. I think that's a great tool. It gives you, your 34 strengths all in order. It's one way of looking at the world. You're looking at it through a different lens. From a financial perspective, what is it that you believe is really unique about this? Because you said earlier, you can help build unique solutions. So what is it unique about the DNA behavioral solutions piece that you bring to the world that people could be looking at?
I think it's the measurement of financial behaviors.
Okay.
And whether that's in a business, I think that when, today where we talk a lot about looking at leaders.
Yeah.
And we talk about leadership talents, leadership communication, emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
But do we look at how leaders deal with money? How do they make financial decisions? What are the biases they bring to making decisions?
That's
not really typically been looked at and certainly not measured. But that's something that's fundamental, because at the end of the day, money drives a business.
Yeah.
The results of a business are going to come through the actions of people. But we've not had a basis to measure, until DNA behavior turns up, we've not had a basis to measure leaders in that way.
That's really interesting.
You know, in when I started with this work, a bit over 20 years ago, you know, I had been a CPA, I'd been a wealth manager, and, you know, I came up with my thinking around human behavior in the context of how individuals, families were making financial investment and life decisions. And I wanted to understand that more broadly, you know, that at that stage, human behavior was pretty much and has typically been limited to doing a risk profile.
And it's interesting because that's where I was going to go when you mentioned that. I think about my wealth advisor in the UK. You know, over the last 20 years, I've often done a risk profile to work out where we want to be investing and what our profile is. And what I hear there is what you're saying. It's about how you make life decisions, linking into the families, the individual. So it's about that decision basis.
But it's also looking at the individuals, looking at you, Phil, far more holistically than just the risk profile. How does the financial planner communicate with you and then potentially your wife? You know, and you've done your DNA, right? Yeah. Discovery, and you know, you're an engager. Does the financial planner understand that engagers have a propensity to want to invest money in people, social settings that could lead to, you know, not having a delight, if you want to call it that, in doing budgets, right? How you're an innovator. How do you invest in you know, in innovation inside your business personally?
Yeah.
The standard investment risk profile isn't going to tell you any of that.
No.
And therefore, the financial planner is not going to have much real overall perspective of Phil Rose, right?
Yeah.
And all of what's going to then ultimately influence the decision. So, you know, getting to know you intimately, they're not going to know a lot. Now, you can complete one of the investment risk profiles that says, you know, ask the question, well, the market went down 20% overnight. What would you do?
Yeah.
Well, your answer to that's different depending on the circumstances you're in and how you read that question. And there are varying other questions those profiles ask, but should that question be asked? Probably, but it's not, it's limited information.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, building a life and financial plan for you, which is integrated and therefore follows that easy investments.
Yeah.
Requires far more holistic understanding of Phil and your spouse and family.
Yeah.
Than what a simple risk profile tells you.
Interesting. So it's a wider picture. It's that holistic view effect is what you said earlier. You're getting that total picture of what's needed.
What we're understanding is more getting then also helping you then ultimately build a healthier relationship to money by understanding you more fully. That's part of it. But this is also, you know, not to make this confusing, but it's not dissimilar in a business.
Okay.
Leaders need to understand what their relationship to money is. You know, what the decisions that get made in a company and affect profitability affect the stakeholders, but also affect them personally because their remuneration's tied to it.
Yeah. So one question I've got though, you mentioned earlier about, you know, it's very easy to analyze myself and my wife. We do it. So what if you've got a board where you've got 5 people on the board that are different profiles? How do you make a decision then? Because as an entrepreneur, I want to grow my business, I probably have got a board of people unless I'm a one-man band. So how do you incorporate the different views?
Well, you definitely need to understand, you know, the reason to profile the board is to understand what their perspectives might be and how they're going to be looking at innovation. How do they look at company culture, the results? You know, are they just going to follow suit because you're the CEO and they'll in the end just say yes to what you're going to do, or is there another strong mind there that's got a different thought pattern, set of experiences that needs to be tapped into?
Yeah. Okay.
Is the board, you know, very staid and old world in its thinking, or are they actually very creative and you need to figure out a way to harness that to get the best out of their their thinking. That would be part of, working with your board. I think you want to know those things when you design your board, to be honest.
And interesting, isn't it? Because actually, I think that word design is really key. I often talk about, and quoting from various other people in terms of where we grow businesses, but we were talking about, getting the right people on the bus. And I think if I think about Jim Collins, that's what he always said, get the right people on the bus to start with before you build your strategy. What I'm hearing there is you can profile those people in another way, not just Clifton strengths or other programs, but here's a financial profiling at heart to understand their behaviors.
Yeah, and I think I've never been a proponent of saying, well, you don't need to use Clifton Strengths or Myers-Briggs or DISC. I think I'm more of a proponent of understand what they are telling you.
Yeah.
And what's the knowledge gap that you might be having, and what are you being told out of those other systems?
Yeah. Okay.
Versus what would Hugh tell you out of DNA behavior, and is that what you need? But I think the overall thing that we get to that's easy to understand, that stands us apart, is how people deal with money. Now, we still measure work talents, how you wish to be communicated with. It's all, in a way, I would say DNA's got is an all-in-one solution. But I know people are wedded to other tools that they've used in the past and have been successful. I think that's okay. But how people deal with money has been a missing piece.
Yeah.
But it's fundamental to everything we do. You can't ignore
it's how
that money exists. And if we want to talk company culture, right?
Yeah.
Has money got an impact on company culture? Sure, it does.
You're right. Yeah. So one thing I've got a question, is we talked about this word identity before. And if I think about as a coach, when we're coaching people, we say we work with purpose-led business leaders, we work purpose-led businesses. And you and I talked about this word purpose-driven and identity. I wonder if we just explore that, because there's one bit you mentioned to me before was that a lot of this money and identity it's rooted in your life experiences. So my history is dictating, which we know is dictating how I show up today. Can we just explore a bit of that around how that identity and purposes comes to bear on this DNA behavioral aspects of me, or the impact we're talking about?
Yeah, I think, Phil, there's a number of components to unpack here. But if I said that, I look at identity as being how you want to be seen out there in the world, right? How do you want the world to see you, to perceive you? How do you want to be, then internally, how do you want to be remembered?
Yeah, okay.
And to what standard are you going to hold yourself accountable, right? Now, and how do you stand apart in your identity from another person, right?
Yeah.
Two people could have the same life purpose or similar life purpose around, well, I want to help, I'm driven to help children make the most of their talents. That's what gets them out of bed each day. Or I'm driven to be, my purpose in life is to serve people by being a conductor, right? An orchestra conductor or whatever that is.
Okay.
But that's not necessarily completely their identity.
Okay.
The identity is also, how you show up out there in the world, actually how you take action. So two people could have a similar purpose, but they're going to go and do it differently.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I look at also, what is your X factor? And, we came back to, my identity is really around being, a behavioral solutions architect, because my X factor, where I'm really good at is helping people see and address problems and designing solutions around the intersection of human behavior and money, right? That's what I'm good at, and then creating pathways for people with that. And that's what I want to, focus on for myself and be remembered for, be sought out for, right, as unique. And so I think that the identity plays into, really does play into your uniqueness.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your personal brand?
Yeah.
I don't think your life purpose statement is your personal brand necessarily. I think it's wrapped up in it. And I'm certainly not saying purpose is not important. I'm absolutely all about being purpose driven.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think that word purpose driven can have different meanings. And I think the bit you said just now, two people could have a similar purpose, but they could take different action depending on their identity. So it's actually about how you go out there and tackle the problem that you're addressing.
And how are you unique in your approach or gifting, if you want to call it that.
Okay.
To do that. And that's where your talents are important and your passion is important.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's sort of, some people talk about it as unique ability. I've called it unique gifting, but, or your X factor. What makes you stand apart? And I think that's fundamental to your identity.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's really interesting.
But your values are important. There's sort of the non-negotiables of how you're going to operate or relate to people. But again, they're not your identity as such.
Yeah.
But they're an important part of the package.
Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think a lot of listeners to this show will be thinking about, okay, well, how does this impact me? Because we often talk about purpose, we talk about identity, we talk about values, and we're talking about different, the X factor in different words. So if I'm thinking I'm a business owner, I'm running my business, I've been running it for a number of years. Let's just take two scenarios. You can get two business owners running the same type of business. One does amazingly well, one isn't so well, but they both got the same talent, but they're not making the businesses work in the same way. How would you identify the problems that the lesser of those two, if money was the main driver, are showing up?
Yeah, well, I do think that in at one level that the one that's maybe lesser will probably be lacking in clarity about their purpose.
Okay.
But they'll be lacking in clarity about how they are best, how they best go and execute that business too, in terms of their own talent. How do they manage the team? The team, they could both be in waste management businesses.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they do it, but because of their talents, and they could be in waste management business because they both have a desire to see a clean environment, right?
Okay, makes sense.
But one's successful as against the other because one maybe has got, for example, their X factor is in how the customer gets served and how there's innovation in that, as opposed to the other person's just counting how many garbage bins get picked up or waste fields we deal with or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're thinking very transactionally, right?
Okay. Yeah, okay, that's interesting.
And so it's a matter of how are they putting their personal brand and therefore also the company brand out there. And that, that comes back to the organizational culture. How do the clients or the customers get dealt with? How do the employees get dealt with? That's all part of the organizational identity. When it gets to organizational identity as part of it, but that starts with the leadership.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting because there's an organizational identity element as well as so there's the individual, but there's also the way the collective.
If the individual doesn't get it right, the company's never going to get it right. If they're the
okay, that's interesting. So I'm intrigued in that case. So on your Zoom title, I can see the word initiator, and you've already let slip from my perspective that from what you've seen for me, it's about engager. Tell me about initiator. What does that mean? What does it mean for a layman? What does initiator mean in the business?
So a person who's an initiator is someone who's going to go and initiate action, drive actions, be very logical in terms of getting results.
Yeah.
Extremely it will tend to be about the goals.
Yeah. Okay.
Probably quite matter of fact in their in their approach to things.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so but they're the strengths of an initiator.
Okay.
They'll go out and be goal driven. They'll take some risks. Quite
Yeah.
a lot of initiators are tend to be quite creative.
Yeah.
So they're into problem solving, very rational about it.
Okay.
But the struggle is, and this is the difference, say, to you, who's an engager, is, being the relationship-driven person, being, people friendly in the initial interactions.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting.
And so that's where the initiator, dealing with teams and clients, has to learn to adapt.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting.
Or develop that side of themselves. Like, we've all got both these sides, the potential to develop both these sides.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we're born with a strength to, generally speaking, 90% of us are born with a strength the one way or the other.
Mm.
And our life challenge is to work on the other side, right? So yours is more the engager, but there might be areas where, okay, you're extremely, friendly,
Yeah.
enthusiastic, people enjoy that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then a business and life needs structure at certain points
Mm-hmm.
to systemize things, to be procedural.
Yeah.
And either you've got to learn to do that for yourself, which is energy draining, or bring someone in to do it.
Yeah. Okay. So this is about bringing the other legs to the stool together to help the business work. So, as you said, from an initiator point of view, you've got that action-driven, logic-driven, extremely goal-driven, matter-of-fact. But actually, say there's a potential to neglect the risk. Neglect of the relationships and the people aspect.
Yeah, and that's where business, needs. At the end of the day, you need all of the dimensions.
Yeah. Yeah.
But not every person can bring all of the dimensions, or should just change how they're hardwired completely to do it. But to be unaware of the extent of your strength and struggles, and that's problematic.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting.
And you can't just say as well, I think that where we, get to is, okay, Hugh's got a set of strengths. Well, I can't just walk around saying, well, I'm operating in my strengths and bad luck on the rest.
Yeah.
If that's having a negative impact on people, I've got to do some adapting and own up to that. So just working in your strengths and ignoring what your struggles are, that's not good enough.
Yeah. And I think that's really interesting, isn't it? Because I know, there's a lot of talk about strengths-based leadership and strengths-based businesses. And I think the key bit that you said there is it's good to be aware of your strengths, but it's actually they're aware of your blind spots, the things that are also going to cause the problems. Because if you can't adapt and be mindful to those, then the business isn't going to go forward. So actually, here we see an issue where if you've got a strong, let's just take your example, initiator, strongly action-driven, logical, extremely goal-driven, and you're trying to build a business, you might miss out on those aspects of the business that need the people side. So to build a culture, you need two sides coming together. But I can also see the tension that might come out because of that as well, between the two types of people.
There's a results and relationships tension. And that's the challenge for nearly all leaders, right? Okay. Except the rare few, or that 10% that we would call adapters that are in the middle.
Okay.
That can a little bit move more easily or flexibly between the two.
Yeah.
But even that's got a set of challenges, because at some day you can't just waffle. You've got to, and flip-flop, you've got to put a stake in the ground, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, really what we would encourage people to capitalize on their strengths. Mm-hmm. Because that's where you're swimming downriver. You're not trying to spend all day mending the struggles.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But you've got to be aware that strengths overplayed can become a struggle.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And that's the blind spot that sits there. The stronger you are in a particular talent, let's say you're very pioneering and goal-driven like I am, that can, if I don't watch that, or risk-taking, that can become a struggle if I'm not aware of how strong that is in its impact.
Yeah. Okay.
How I'm directing it. And that's the behavioral self-awareness.
Yeah.
So you have got to know what the struggles are, or for an engager like you, Phil, great at communicating, that's an easy thing for you to do. But is there a day that, talking too much is problematic? It can be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just understanding that. But then in a team, how do you fill the gap? Right? Hugh isn't going to be the relationship builder in the team as such. That's the the very warm relational person in every setting as a natural act.
Okay.
Have I got to demonstrate some of that? Yes. But I can't, you can't be relationship build. It's not easy to be relationship builder all the time, naturally, and results driven. It doesn't, as you said, there's a tension, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
How to deal with that is having different team members with different talents, and then having the trust and communication channels within the team.
Yeah.
And people, you mentioned right seats on the bus.
Yeah.
Having people in the right roles.
Yeah, I agree with that. So it's really interesting, isn't it? I'm seeing this team mix coming together. And you say there's a strength side, and then there's a struggle side. And I think it's coming out with that key piece around your uniqueness. And I think coming back to what you said earlier, it's about understanding that uniqueness and how you bring that to the world, because that unique gifting is the bit that helps you drive yourself forwards.
Yes, absolutely. That's what helps you drive yourself forward. And the clearer you are about that, then that will help define the roles or the tasks that you do, what gets delegated, who deals with what person, who stands up in front of with the business, who does not.
Okay.
It then drives everything.
Yeah. So here's the question I've got in that case. Let's make the link now to the financial piece, because I understand that from a strengths perspective. I understand what you're talking about, initiator and engager. So how is this related to financials? Because this is the key piece, obviously, within DNA behavior. And as you said, we're looking here at the key piece for what you're talking about there is understanding the financial aspects of it. So how do those two pieces knit together?
Yeah, so if you think about it, that the flow of money really follows the decisions that people make.
Okay.
And the decisions they make reflect their perspectives.
Okay.
So let's say that you've got a results-driven leader, very results-driven leader, hardline initiator. They're likely to invest in things, or invest in whatever's going to achieve the goal, the results in the sales, building financial growth, right?
Yeah.
But they may not invest as much in, or take the time to invest as much in, the culture side, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And in the people, right?
Yeah.
Or it comes to making a difficult budgetary choice.
Yeah.
It may not be handled. There might be some short-term thinking that gets in the way. Okay, well, we've got to let these people go, as opposed to thinking about the longer term.
Yeah.
That's potentially how people think about money, or what innovation is going to be invested in.
Yeah. Okay.
And so there are a lot of people out there that throw a lot of money at innovation and don't really work through how could innovation be started with a much lower investment, see whether something works. It's attitudinal.
Yeah.
Sense.
Some
don't even think about innovation at all. Well, we're doing okay with the current products we've got, and our gross margins are good. Why do we need to worry about it?
Yeah, we often hear it, don't we? And that's stuck in the sand.
And so they're not prepared to invest anything in new innovations, and then they wonder why 2 years later their product's been wiped out, right?
Yeah.
They're all financial attitudes, right?
Okay, that's really interesting.
Because it's about how someone is thinking about, if you want to call it value adding and being enterprising in the business, and then how the financial resource is used.
Okay.
You'll get other leaders that will say, well, gee, the person X running Y business, who's my friend, flies first class. Well, I should be too. And they're flying around the world on $10,000 first class airfare, staying in the best hotels, but their company can't really afford it. And is it making them show up better at meetings? Is it helping the company performance? No. Is a lavish office and a boat for the company helping? Probably not.
Yeah. Doesn't actually do anything for them. I think it's interesting, isn't it? So this is,
and so they're all perspectives on money and what I should have, entitled to have, versus what's good for the business. Now, because of who we are as people, we all have, we all look at that same transaction potentially differently. I can remember being on a board of an organization, and somebody was querying a regional director's expenditure on travel and entertainment. And they're saying, well, her spending is higher than all the other 9 regional directors.
Yeah.
And I looked and said, yes, but look at the engagement in her area is much higher, because she's going out there and touching the flesh, right? Is she having fun on the way? Yeah, and she was an engager style person.
Yeah.
Is she having some fun? Yeah, but also she's spending a lot of time away from home.
So you've got to balance the two.
What do you expect? If the result, if at the end of the day, the result's coming in and it's improving the organization and engagement, maybe we all could think of it that way. So, it's not how I think of the world, but I actually created that budget for that person. But I could see what they were like, and that was a better way for them to manage their area, as opposed to somebody else put all their money to developing a new solution to get new members in, technology solution.
Yeah, I like that.
That's how you think of, that's how people's attitudes to money and how they think about the world all comes together.
Yeah, I love that. And I in some ways, it's about helping people work in their flow, and it's about understanding what makes people tick, so that you can, as you say, you can look at it from an accountant perspective and see why they're making that decision, and they're getting the results from their engager style, and therefore you can say, okay, that makes sense, because there's a relationship.
If it's all being done responsibly, it's probably fine.
Yeah. Right? Okay, I like that. So how would people go about finding you? I think this is the key bit, because I think this is fascinating conversation about this strengths basis and understanding your uniqueness effectively, and what you can bring, that gift you've got. How would people go about finding you if they wanted to find out more about their own DNA behavior?
So 2 ways to find out about Hugh is go to our website at dnabehavior.com.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of knowledge articles in there, ebooks, blogs, things I've written, done, but also you can go to my LinkedIn account, and there's, bi-weekly postings in there on, varying things, thoughts, philosophies that you can get, and I can be contacted from either of those 2 places.
Okay, perfect. And what I'll do is I will include your LinkedIn bio in the show notes for this, so people can go and check that out straight away.
Absolutely.
Now we said we would record 2 episodes on this recording, so I'm going to introduce the second episode in a minute, because what I'd love to do on that second episode is delve into what drives you. What's the thing behind you that's got you to where you are, that's at your heart as well, if that's okay. So for all you listeners, you're going to need to listen to episode 2 to find out a bit more about Hugh, to find out why Hugh does what he does. But I'm going to wrap this episode up and say thank you, Hugh. It's been great to talk to you here. And we're
fantastic, Phil. And I look forward to continuing the conversation
on the other side. Thank you. Now, Hugh, I'm just going to pause us for a second. Welcome back to episode 2 with Hugh Massie. I'm Phil Rose, the host of the show, and this has been an exploration around DNA and behavior. I've been talking to Hugh on the first episode here about behavioral solutions and what it means. And we've explored around uniqueness and actually this unique gift that people have. And Hugh introduced the fact that he's an initiator and I'm more of an engager. And we talked about the strengths that come out there, but also this the other side of it, where we have a struggle on the other side. And I think the key point that I heard from Hugh is initiator type was very much around very driven, very action driven, extremely goal driven, very matter of fact potentially, very good at taking risks, but maybe looking at the relationship side, there's a weakness there that needs to be identified. Whereas for me, it's the opposite. It's very much around the relationships and the people friendly, but possibly the weakness is around driving things forwards and maintaining momentum. And sometimes the talking has to stop. We have to move the business forwards. So I'm looking forward to this second part of this show to really try to delve into this. So in the next 35 minutes, I'd love listeners to understand a bit more about Hugh. And I think I'd love to ask you the question about what drives him. Because we did talk on the first episode around it's life experience that really helps form your identity. And it's that life experience that I'd like to pick up on now. So Hugh, welcome back to the Sparks by Ignium podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Phil, and it's great to spend more time with you and unpack some of this even more.
Yeah.
So, in terms of what drives me, I as you were asking that, I was reflecting on some of my earlier career. I started out as a chartered accountant.
Okay.
For English people or Australian people who have world's listening to it, or in America, CPA. And I was very good at designing. I was a tax specialist mainly. I was very good at designing solutions, understanding what the problem was, coming up with a new solution, a way to, of course, doing it the right way, not tax evasion, but coming up with creative ways of solving management's problems as far as taxation was concerned, or for a family, whatever.
Okay.
But at the same time, when I was in Arthur Andersen, I was always keen on developing people, and I happened to, my sort of sideline role in there was also running all the tax training for Australia, and I actually did that in Asia Pacific area as well. So I like training and developing people. I like to see people maximize the most of who they are.
Yeah, I love that.
If you bring that down to my life purpose, which underpins my identity in a lot of ways, is I want to help people become self-empowered by optimizing their talents and their financial behavior.
That's interesting.
But then you could take all of that further and say, why do I want to do that? Well, I believe that you operate in a life or in a world that you are more aligned to your talents and financial behaviors, you will be less stressed.
Yeah.
Right? Because stress comes if you're working in the wrong role.
Yeah.
Or in the wrong business with the wrong people.
Yeah.
There will be stress.
Yeah.
And if you're less stressed, you can be happier, more successful from working in your flow, and importantly, in today's conversation out there, you can be healthier.
Yeah, very true.
Stress has a big impact on your health, and in there, I think that people forget how much stress money causes, just generally speaking. Whether you have a lot of money, and the stress becomes, what do I do with it? What's the impact on my children? Who do I give it to? Etc. Relationship problems are often caused by money or having a lot of it.
Yeah, very true.
And not having enough money can be a problem too. Being deep in debt, or just not being able to put food on the table in any way. It can be a stress. I think at the bottom of all of this, stress is really the big, as I've come to realize it, stress is the big thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And the solution to it is becoming more personally aligned.
Yeah.
In your talents and your financial behaviors.
Yeah.
And so that a lot of that's what drives me. But you said at the start, Phil, I'm an initiator. I'm pretty extreme initiator. More,
Okay.
I've got probably for a lot of people, I've got a pretty reserved front. You're not seeing that today because you've got me in center show talking. I like doing podcasts, but I've got a very reserved front, so I'm much more of a reflector, thinker. But I do go out there and put myself on the edge as far as life is concerned, certainly in business.
Yeah.
In testing new boundaries. I wouldn't say I do that in physical pursuits, although if I get on the ski slope, I like to race down the mountain or whatnot. But there's a line there, whereas others do stuff, in sort of the physical sports arena that involves far higher risks than tennis and golf, which I play. I used to play cricket too, but I think if you take that the part that people don't really see from me is there's a strong desire to position myself to make quantum leaps in life and to maximize my potential.
That's interesting.
And that really comes from being a pioneer. Where can I go and blaze a trail with something different and look back on my, life and career and say, yeah, I did something that had a lot of impact. It's not just about making money. I think that's a problem that a lot of business people and entrepreneurs have in life. They're always measuring themselves by what's in the bank account.
Yeah, yeah.
If that's your definition of success, I think you're going to set yourself up for failure.
Yeah, yeah. We see that so often, don't we? I think that's one of the key things. I love that word pioneer in terms of do something different and make an impact. Just want to rewind slightly because you mentioned there about position yourself to maximize potential. And one thing you said to me when we last met, you said about you left Australia and you went to the US because that's where you needed to build the business. To me, that's a pioneering spirit.
That's a pioneering spirit. I think it was about, people ask me, well, why did you go? Well, it's to America.
Yeah.
It was really about life fulfillment. I think that probably those who know me in Sydney would say, well, Hugh had it all and pretty good life there, a business, could do what I want when I want, sort of pretty much all the time. But I wasn't stretched with that.
It's interesting. Okay. So there's something
and I needed to build an identity and a brand.
Yeah.
And test myself to the limits. I think that's what I needed to do. It's for some people that's getting their yacht and sailing around the world solo, right? For others, it's trying to win the British Open golf tournament. We've got, but I think we've all got something. I think I said that in the other podcast. We've all got something that maybe we've got the potential to win a gold medal in.
Mm.
You want to go and do that? Is that and this is different for each of us. It's in the context of our own life.
Yeah, yeah.
And how that shows up in your life is different, and I think that's where comparing yourself to other people is an extremely dangerous game.
Yeah, and we always see that, don't we? And I think there's a key point there. And the bit I think I just heard you say there is, your risk taking was about, pushing yourself to the limits, but actually looking at how you can maximize your impact. So you need to do that. You left a comfortable life, so in Sydney, you had what you needed, but you then went to do something different, to expand, to prove you could do it. So that, when you talked about the initiator profile, that sums up a lot of what you were talking there about the risk-taking element of that.
Yeah, the risk-taking is huge because when I started coming to America, I came from Sydney 40 times in 4 years between 2002 and 2006.
Wow.
I took my chance on some people to help me in building the system, going around to conferences to get, ideation or to see whether the ideas would work. How did I like being in America? But, I really, in a lot of ways, I came here not knowing anybody, with nothing. I didn't have, it wasn't like I came to a job or an instant pay packet or anything. It was pretty much Hugh in a suitcase, to be honest.
Wow. Wow.
But I had one thing I had is no one could take away from me is I had my gifts and talents.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Yeah.
Which have expanded, and I've been able to be fulfilled. And I think that, you look back on it and think, yep, it's the people that I've met, the opportunities. And while I've been on this journey now a bit over 20 years, I'm only just at that in a lot of ways, and some would say it's been successful, but I'm really just at that cusp of it really being exponential and being even greater, because it takes that kind of time for these things to work. You don't just turn up.
Yeah.
In a place like America, or people from England think they can go to Australia and there's gold under the street. It doesn't work that way.
No, we all know it's interesting, isn't it? You mentioned a couple of words a few times. You mentioned that word exponential, and you've mentioned quantum leaps. And I think sometimes, as entrepreneurs, we often want to make that quantum leap, or we want to have that exponential growth in our business. And a lot of us start our businesses. In fact, most entrepreneurs, I think, start their business for one of two reasons: either commercial, they want to make loads of money, or they want to change the world. And at some point in their journey, they either make more money than they've ever had before, and then they go out changing the world, or they realize they've changed the world, but they need the money. For you, what was the driver in terms of that, in terms of your entrepreneurial quantum leap? What was the thing that said to you, I need to go to America to do this? What was that spark for you?
Yeah, I think it was about the fact that in America, I would be out, would be a place where I could maximize my impact myself. As probably going to be more receptive market for what I was doing. That sitting there in Australia talking about financial behavior was a pretty foreign concept, and certainly in the early 2000s, and even in America it relatively was, but I think people were more open to embracing it.
Okay.
And that's shown to be true today, where more and more people are embracing behavioral economics, behavioral finance. Now, is it being talked about in Australia at the moment? Yes, but it's not to the same degree. And I'm not there now. I'm here.
Yeah.
But the concept has definitely it's definitely progressed. Am I still a unique player in this field? Absolutely.
Okay.
In what we do and how we do it. There's one other group, that's here in America. In fact, is led by an Australian as well.
Okay.
That's in this space, and we've, been, got now involved in a pretty heavy collaboration in it, rather than, I think, being competitive about it. And that helps us both. But I think that, that was really the driver. But of course, you would say, if I can impact a lot of people, probably that would have a big financial impact.
Yeah, that's really
but
interesting.
If you set the goal, well, I'm going to America because that's a better place for me to make $1 billion, as opposed to, can I impact 100 million or 1 billion people? Very different way of thinking.
So it's interesting.
And I think if you're going on the totally on it's a numbers game, you could end up being very disappointed.
Yeah. But talking of numbers, I think this is really interesting, isn't it? Because often we talk about, having a vision, having a purpose in life. And you and I have talked about this bit before, but I'd love to know what's the driver for you now? What's your ambition for this business, or this thing you're trying to create? It's not about money, but it's about something else. What's that ambition that sits within you?
Well, I it's still back to the purpose of helping people all over the world become self-empowered to optimize their talents and their financial behaviors.
Okay.
To help build that alignment so they can reduce stress.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be happy, successful, and live for longer. Could our solutions be could a billion people a year benefit from our solutions? Yes.
Wow.
They can. It's technologically possible for all of that to happen. Technology is probably my friend right now with artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, the power of all of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
To do that on a global scale. So I think that the original thinking, purpose, reason for doing it, in a lot of ways, hasn't changed.
Wow, that's really impressive, and that's a real guiding star for you by the sounds of it as well. So let's just switch track it to, because there's another purpose beyond you as well. And we said we were trying to talk about this in terms of I'm going to use the word, your out of work purpose as well. And you may say it's combined. I'd love to just explore a bit about that and how behavioral DNA impacts that other purpose and the other mission you have in life. So would you mind just expanding on a bit about that in terms of where Boys Without Fathers comes into this?
Well, I was waiting for you to cue me in on the Boys Without Fathers, and I think there's a very close alignment between the two.
Okay.
Because everything I'm going to do in life from now on is going to relate to self-empowerment of people, and helping them with their talents and optimize their talents and their financial behavior. But the Boys Without Fathers is a very specific thing that I'm working with, because, Phil, I was a boy without a father. My father died when I was 1. My mum was pregnant with my brother. So my brother John is a boy without a father too. Slightly perhaps different circumstances we came into the world, or our life experience at age under 1 and under 2 was different because of that. But we're both in that, and I think it's probably affected us in different ways. But that's for my brother John to share his journey, as opposed to me to try and share his journey. But for me, you can look at it and sit there and say, am I a victim of this, or am I going to be a victor?
Yeah, it's interesting.
And while I would always wanted to have a father, I think that, most people would, right? I could see if you had a really cruel dad, maybe you don't want that person in your life because it's too toxic. But I wasn't old enough to know that, and that's not the truth. The fact is I didn't have a father, but my job is to go out there in the world and make the most of the hand that was given to me, and to be the best that I can be. And to honor myself, but also honor him and my mother. And my mother is 93 and still alive and thriving.
Wow, that's amazing.
With that. And so, but the Boys Without Fathers gets more specific than that, because what I learned from doing these podcasts like this 3 years ago now, I did 6 in a row with our clients, 6 weeks running, and each one of them was a boy without a father in different circumstances.
Wow.
One had it had been so impactful for him that he did a PhD, doctorate work in understanding it, and the thesis, and what came out of it was, some very important research pieces around the fact that, if your father has left the home, particularly in whatever way it is, whether it's they've just left, died, which was in my case, or divorced, you don't see the person much anymore. That happens a lot too. But the earlier the father leaves the home, the more likely that you're going to have a literacy issue,
Okay.
social integration issues, weight, so obesity,
Okay.
and aggression.
Wow.
And that, there's quite a clear linkage between crime and a boy without a father.
Wow. I didn't know
And
that.
so, it's not saying that girls don't have, for girls without a father, because, it could be, I suppose I could have had a sister and there would have been an
Yeah.
impact, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I know is the journey of a boy without a father for the journey that I had.
Yeah.
And, really, it gets to me wanting to help, and along with some of these other guys
Mm.
who've been in this situation, to help us be men of
Yeah.
influence, to influence other boys without a father to become a man of influence.
Yeah. I love that. I love that
And,
phrase.
and that they become the victor in their life and not the victim of their circumstances, which does mean that in some cases, hopefully, these kids are getting help at
Yeah.
under 10 years old, certainly as they're becoming adults. And so, there's a lot of work to be done in this area, Phil, for the future.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's part of why I'm in the human behavior space,
Yeah.
is because I want to see youth maximize their potential.
Well, and just with your initiator hat on, and I think I probably know the answer to this, but did you create Boys Without Fathers, or was it
Yes.
making you? Okay, so that's the initiator part of you doing something different and driving something forwards.
Yeah, well, I created it. I've got a team around me, but so I suppose I initiated it.
Yeah.
Then there's a team around me, but we've got, we're still working on our model of, and how we grow it and grow the influence, but step by step, that's happening.
Yeah. Wow. And is it US based, Australian based, worldwide? Where's the main locale
Well,
of it?
potentially it's at the moment it's US based, but
Okay.
I think that potentially over time it could become global.
Yeah.
That's just going to be a matter of having the right team and the right interests, I think,
Mm.
globally
Okay.
to do it. I think the issues are not just here in America. For a
No.
boy without a father, they're clearly everywhere.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's really interesting, isn't it, how that is driving you. And I think what you said there about, helping people become the victor, not the victim, and making the most of what you've got. You've got that ability to go out there, having lost your father at an early age. And even though people would say, well, you're only one, but actually you grew up without that father, and so did your brother. So that's really impacted your life. And here's the question that's going on for me at the moment is when we've talked on this podcast and the previous one, we talked about how your life experiences affect your DNA behavior. So I'm just now thinking, how has that life impacted the Hugh that I'm seeing today?
Yeah, that's a very deep question. So, no, I think what you've got to take in there is that your DNA, what we call your DNA hardwired behavior, that's deeply ingrained in you, 85% ingrained in you by the time you're 3 years old, 95% by the time you're 7. That's been proven now in quite a lot of different research studies. So that's not Hugh Massie just saying that,
Yeah.
although I intuitively knew it when I started DNA behavior. But, there's Harvard research studies and other studies that would say that.
Mm. Mm.
So if you understand that, when you're conceived, then you're conceived with a set of genetics,
Yeah.
right? But even from the process of conception onwards, and some will argue before conception, but let's not go completely there. But starting from that time, there is an environment
Yeah.
that you are absorbing,
Yeah.
and that's the early life experiences. And so then you come into the world. Or do you
Yeah.
come into the world where something's missing? It's cold, it's warm,
Yeah.
it's easy, there's plenty of food, not food. Even as a kid,
Yeah.
not able to talk, you're still absorbing
Yeah.
that environment. That is shaping you right? And then there's this whole field of epigenetics that we're now talking about, so that the genes that you have can be switched on or switched off because of the epigenome. But you're the master of the epigenome, right? But if you took me and said, okay, I was shaped a certain way genetically, that's very much the nature bit.
Yeah.
But I had an environment where, at 3 or 4 months old, my father's diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor. My mother is just pregnant with my brother.
Yeah.
I'm left a lot to my own devices in some ways as a child, as a baby, right?
Yeah.
And my mother's coping with that situation. She did a great job. There's certain maternal things that happen in these situations, and then she's obviously got my brother there, so there's a very nurturing situation that goes on. You can get into deep in the science, but I think that what I realized is that out of this is that my hard wiring, either I was already given it genetically, but the early life situation cemented it in harder, where I was left playing by myself.
Yeah. You had to fend for
Less
yourself.
attention. You start to do things by yourself. You become independent. You become more reserved and reflective in whatever way that takes place as a little child, but that shows up later. Now, is that just me thinking that? No, because I put, 2.5 million people have experienced the DNA systems. Now, I haven't facilitated every one of those persons.
Yeah.
But I've been through enough facilitations where I've seen people show up with pretty similar, not the same metrics as me. Only takes one question for me to know, yep, something went on
behind
early in life, and that's why you get a set of numbers this way.
That's really interesting. Really interesting.
Yeah. And then for somebody else, something else went on, and they got a different set of numbers.
Yeah.
And you can't say that that's not true. It is.
It is. It's the fact.
And so, okay, at 3 years old, 7 years old, I've got this set of talents that's been heavily wired into me. I go to a boarding school.
Okay.
At 9 years old, turning 10, I'm there 8 years. More things get cemented in. You leave, but that's the way I'm going to operate, right?
Yeah, it's you.
It's me, and I've got to deal with all of that, whether you call it the genetic, it's the mixture of the genetics and the early life experiences. And then there's other later life experiences. But I think the thing is that what people should understand is that what's really hardwired into you early on is harder to change.
Yes, understand.
It will show up instinctively under pressure. But that's also where your flow situation can be as well.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the real strengths that you could capitalize on. Right. Things that happen to you or events that you experience later on, they can be very deep.
Yeah.
But with coaching and development, there's more chance to change how you think about those, the trajectory of those events. Now, there's some obviously that are some things that are so heinous, so massive, it's hard to get around those. But with coaching and development, you can. I mean, but that doesn't come back to our previous point, Phil. That doesn't mean just because you've been hardwired up with a set of strengths and struggles, that you just that they become an excuse. They're not an excuse.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because that's the key when you're running a business or just in life. And I think what I'm hearing from you, Hugh, is that looking at this DNA behavior, although we've linked it here in terms of you're looking at financial and business, but actually this is about life in general. And I think once you start recognizing this and understanding your strengths and your unique gifts that you've got, it's about being aware of them, but also looking at those blind spots, so to speak, and saying, okay, what else do I need to be aware of, and how do I show up to other people as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, I came to realize that if I was going to, in the wealth management space that I initially started this in, although I realized that I was actually intuitively working with this when I was a tax specialist, but let's just take the wealth management space. If I was going to help people with their wealth planning, I needed to understand their life, that if they're going to maximize their wealth, they've probably got to maximize their talents. How they're thinking about money. This is all wrapped up together. I've got to understand the human being
together
and put a tailor-made suit on each one. And understanding people from the inside out, how they're wired, measuring it was my approach to doing it. Some will say I can do that by guessing.
But
or conversations. I don't think you really can. I think that not as quickly. I think it takes longer to get there. Whereas I at least know where to start with each person with far more clarity. Every time if I do this, and that unpacks them, because one thing I'm doing is I'm unpacking them from what their strength is. From knowing what their strength is. And how their life's working, as opposed to from what my strength might be, or just guessing. And that's a very big difference.
So here's a question as we come towards
and I'm not thinking about them as a transaction. I'm thinking about them as a person.
And that might answer.
The transaction come into it, absolutely, it's got to at some point. It's not saying, any of this is not saying that money, the financial reward for doing it is not important, or the financial reward for building a business is not important. It is. But it's starting all of it in the right place.
That's interesting. So as we come towards the top of the hour and trying to wrap up the podcast in terms of timing, I've got a question which I'm going to vary, because I often ask people this question. I want to vary it for you in terms of, with what you now know, if you were to go back and give the young Hugh a message, whether that's the tax specialist at Alpha Anderson, or whether it's in the earlier life, what's that message that you think you would want to convey to Hugh, one way or the other?
Interesting. I suppose it's an interesting question. And I like to think that, I suppose my motto, if you want to call it that, for living your life is to, live in live your unique design, harmony, and without regret. And do I have regrets? Not really a lot, because I think that's would be sad. And certainly to dwell on regrets. Have I made mistakes? Yeah. I think that if I look at it and said, and I think it's still a life growth thing, just being able to build a deeper network of people globally is something that for me to keep working on. But I've probably at time, maybe, I think you do make your own luck. When I've needed something to happen, the right person's always shown up. So maybe I've been better at it than I think I've been better at it. I certainly don't need to give way to the wrong person. But I think that just continually building relationships, being fit, like as for my age now, I'm extremely fit, good at sports, probably way ahead of a lot of others. But when I was at high school, I wasn't. I grew 8 inches 12 months after I left high school. Well, I was pretty good at, reasonably good at ball sports, but I was, 5'6" when you're 17 leaving high school, already younger than the others. I was a reasonably good swimmer, but it wasn't until I was sort of well past 18, I suddenly grew. And the athletic side came out of me. Well, I wonder what would have happened to my confidence if that had happened earlier. But again, maybe I could have been helped earlier, right?
By someone who knew and
defend myself, right? Because I didn't know how to do it. But these are all things you can think about, but is there any point worrying about it? No, because I am where I am today.
Yeah.
And I think with longevity the way it is, and with a healthy attitude,
Yeah.
there's another whole half to live here yet.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I often think about that, living your better half, I think is, whatever way you look at it, as we get older, we learn more and we got more wisdom. And I think what you just said there, and I think the phrase you used is live your unique design in harmony without regret. And I think that's a great motto for life. Just hear those words come out. And interesting, I think when you stitch all these things together in terms of the 2 podcasts we're recording now, there's a whole load of messages I hear there about what drives you. Is that behavior behind you, that identity and that purpose. And I'm really grateful for this conversation. It's been a great conversation. And I'm sure there's another 45 minutes of conversation in there to explore another bit. But, we're going to have to stop it there. But I think there's been so much information. So, Hugh, thank you again.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Phil. I've really enjoyed it. And yeah, we've unpacked a whole lot. And hopefully this helps some other people figure out a way to, propel their life forward. And if anyone wants to ask me questions, please do it.
Yeah, Hugh Massie, thank you. And as I say, we'll put all the show notes together, we'll record the information, and we'll put the links to DNA behavior and Hugh Massie. And Hugh Massie, by the way, is Hugh, and the Massie, Massie, for those listening who can't see. But actually, that's one of the key things there. So Hugh, really, really appreciate your time. Great conversation. And I look forward to connecting and being connected. As you said, we can build a deeper network of people globally, and that's a good start. So thank you.
Perfect, Phil. Thank you so much. Look forward to keeping in contact.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Hugh.